My name's Suzanne Noble, and I'm the founder of Frugal. We started as an iOS app for people on a budget to find great things to do for a tenner and under. And we've recently pivoted to be a website for all daily deals across the UK, range of events as well, cultural things happening at museums and galleries, and comedy, etc. I started it because I've always been a bargain hunter. And when I travel, especially, I like to find great things to do that don't cost a lot of money. It actually all stemmed from going to New York a lot, as you can hear from my voice. I'm actually from New York, but I've lived in the UK a long time. And when I used to go to New York, even though I was born there, I hadn't been there for a very long time, and therefore I had no idea what to do. And I wanted to find like sort of underground cool things to do. And I discovered a website that showed me that kind of content. And I thought, that's a great idea. I'm going to bring that back to the UK. And I sat on it for a really long period of time until eventually I was in a financial position where I could actually create something. And the first iteration was just a really cheap little kind of wrapped website. And then it iterated and iterated and iterated like so many businesses do until it became what it is now. But really, it just stemmed from my love of finding bargains and great things to do on a budget. So it works in two different ways. On the one side, we do what's called aggregating lots of content from lots of different sources. So we pull in daily deals from all different kinds of websites, whether it's Travel, Zoo, Escape Privé, Groupon, Voucher, all of them. We have a cultural feed which comes from a funded body called Culture 24, and that gives us all our cultural information. And then users can add their own content as well. So it's a mix of both. Our revenue model is also two-sided. So when we sell things from the stuff that's being pulled in, we get a commission if it costs money. In some cases, if it's free, we get nothing. And that's basically to get traffic generation and also just to provide great information that's useful to people. And when somebody buys something that's added by a user onto Frugal, we get a booking fee. So there's no actual kind of advertising costs per se. All the information that's loaded there is done completely free of charge for everybody. And it's only when we make a sale that we actually receive money. So my actual background is in PR. So I've done a huge amount over the years, mainly because we've operated on a shoestring. We've been practically self-funded. We have received a small amount of investment. So about 90% of the work that I do is just PR generated, whether that's through social, through going out and reaching journalists and magazines and newspapers and telling them about what we do, using Facebook groups, for instance. So we've built up our traffic or completely organically, and that's how people find out about us. As I said before, we don't actually advertise, so we don't pay people to be on the site. We do have a section where people can be featured, and they can pay for that, and that just gives them a little bit more visibility. But aside from that, we don't actually charge. So we've had about 37,000 downloads on our apps. And we have currently about 7,000 pieces of content on the site, whether that's an event or something travel related or health and beauty, and that spreads over a long period of time. So it's not necessarily that you're going to see everything all at once, because it's all locked in terms of dates. So it's all on a calendar. So what you'll see first is the stuff that's going to happen soon, and then it drips feed as obviously as we move through time. That's really difficult. And that's the biggest challenge that we've had, especially starting as an app. Now we've moved to actually a responsive website. And that was really a decision that I made because of the fact that it's so challenging to get people to keep coming back to an app. I mean, when you think about your phone and how many apps are on your phone and the ones that you regularly use, you might use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all the kind of usual ones. Then you probably will, the secondary ones you'll use are like the weather, useful, what I call utilities kind of apps. And then you get to the third one, which is the ones we fell into, which is, might be Eventbrite or Meetup or, these sorts of ones where you'll refer to them occasionally because you're not going to be going out every single day. And you're not going to be looking for this kind of content every single day. So, you might start out using Frugal often, and then like everything else, it ends up going on the back burner. So we've actually transitioned to make our site just web responsive because we can see that everyone's moving that way. And it's much easier then to start driving traffic to a website because you can use search engine optimization, you can write blog posts, you can post on Facebook and Twitter, and there's loads of different ways that don't have to cost anything to just keep driving traffic, PR, etc. If you've got advertising money, then you can do Facebook ads and you can do other forms of advertising, but mainly as we're a very small startup, we've relied on ourselves to generate the traffic and to keep people coming back. Well, I mean, there are some barriers to entering the market. I mean, the current website has taken our development team 10 months to develop. So you do have to have, finances to be able to build this thing. It's not as simple as it looks. So although, yes, anybody could go and recreate it, it's not that easy. The second thing I would say is we see our business as very much a brand play. People invested in us because we've got a name that's instantly recognizable, and that's really our big USP. So, Virgin or any other big business that you can think of where you immediately think, okay, I know what that means. It's kind of cool. It's across a range of categories and sectors. And we see Frugal very much in that space. We're not the most original business, but we have a very identifiable name. And our ultimate goal is to get to a point where everybody just thinks, I want to go out or I want to find something that's at a discount. Where am I going to look? Well, I just might as well look on Frugal because they've got everything. And then I can just pick and choose what I want. And that's ultimately our goal. So we've been financed in a range of ways. When we first started out, we got a Innovate voucher from the government, and that was a £5,000 voucher that enabled us to create a dashboard that used to scrape the web and pull in content from different sources. That was our first iteration. Mainly, it's been self-financed by myself and my co-founder. We tried to do a bit of crowdfunding and weren't successful. And then we raised some money, around £70,000 from friends and family and a number of angel investors. We did actually get a startup loan as well. So we got a £20,000 startup loan, and that was from Startups Direct. And that was, it's like a bank loan, but obviously it's a government program. Definitely. I mean, raising finance in general is really very difficult. And I don't think people truly appreciate until they go out and do it how hard it is. Even the startup loan, which I was led to believe was going to take 10 days to be approved, which is part of the reason why I went for it. It was like, oh, okay, this seems like a good way to raise a small amount of money very quickly, turned into a 3-month prolonged nightmare. partly because they don't really like technology businesses that aren't going to create revenue immediately. Cupcake businesses, jewelry businesses, kind of food businesses where there's money coming in the door quickly, that's the sort of businesses that tend to get funded using these sorts of loans. So that took a long time. The crowdfunding, again, I was led to believe was a kind of, because I already had some money committed, it was going to be like a top up. That again took 3 months and we weren't successful. And I don't know really if that was a gender-based thing. I think more it was the fact that we were on a platform that wasn't geared towards our sector, consumer businesses. From a gender point of view, angel investing is just really hard because it's very competitive. And by and large, people that set up businesses tend to be men. So we're operating in a smaller space. Also, the businesses that women tend to set up, although not exclusively, tend to be businesses that they know about. So you find a lot of fashion businesses, businesses aimed at children, for instance, and a lot of investors who are predominantly male don't really understand those businesses. They don't really understand where's the problem, what's the challenge, what are they trying to solve. So you find that it's quite difficult to raise the money because of those series of factors. Also, we're in a situation where there's very few female investors. And despite a lot of people I know trying to find more of them, they just don't seem to be around. Women are traditionally risk averse. And so, they tend to put their money in other areas that maybe are a bit more safe. So I think it's a combination of those factors that make it a bit harder for us to raise money. But I think just raising money is hard. Yes, I definitely could not have set the business up without using my own funds. And I continue to fund the business. So I've probably spent in the region of 60,000 pounds on over the years. And if we look at the various iterations and the various ways that we've pivoted the business, I've probably spent that, maybe even more than that. I think it's extremely difficult to set up a business without any financing of any sort. And I know that lots of people would like to think that you can just start a business from nothing, that you can just create a website, or, you can just do something that requires absolutely no investment. It's really, really hard because if you don't have the expertise that I have, for instance, in PR, then how are you going to do your marketing? Are you going to print up brochures? Are you going to advertise on Facebook? Are you going to stand on a street corner and hand stuff out? I mean, it all costs money. So, I did need quite a bit of my own money. And as I say, I continue to put my own money into the business. So we've raised about £72,000 and we gave away 6% for that. And that was at I think it was a pre-money valuation of about 850,000. And that was, as I said, my own family. And then I have 4 other angel investors who put in between 10 and 15,000 pounds each. And that money lasted about 18 months, a year, 18 months. As you can imagine, we weren't really paying ourselves very much money. And we were using it primarily for development. We had some staff, social media manager. We did trialed a bit of Facebook ads and some other forms of marketing. And that was what it was used for. Yeah, it was difficult, not least because if you're going, especially for angel investment, most angel investors will require some sort of warm introduction. So you can kind of find lists of these people, but it's really difficult to go to them cold. They mainly want you to come through a contact, and then you're in this catch-22 situation of, how do I find this person that knows this other person, and does that person trust me enough to be able to make an introduction? Sometimes they're really precious about their own contacts, and they don't want to share them, kind of rightly so, because if they're getting money from them and they're hoping to go back to them again to ask for further money, they don't want their funds to be diverted off to somebody else, right? So it was mainly a result of doing a lot of networking. I participated in a couple of programs that were established by groups that happened to be angel investors, and that helped me because it helped me build trust with them and get them to know me. And ultimately, all the money I received was from people who knew me in some way, shape, or form. They knew me, they'd met me, they'd gotten to know me over a period of time, because especially when you're talking about really early stage investments, they're almost inevitably investing in the founder. They're not really investing in the business. I mean, if you look at how Frugal has evolved, the business that they invested in, it's now a completely different business. And they knew that. They were like, we know that this is not what it's going to be, but we trust that you're experienced enough and know and understand enough about running a business that you'll be able to evolve it to something that's going to work. So really, as an entrepreneur, the first thing people should be doing is trying to establish that trust. You know, when you're meeting people, it's not really about selling that business in that hard. It's about, why should you trust me? You know, let me tell you a bit about how my vision. I think it really depends to a large extent on where you're living, because the UK is very much about putting investment into revenue generating businesses. So I would say to any entrepreneur looking to start a business that the quicker you can generate revenue, the more likely you're going to be to find investment, because we aren't Silicon Valley, you know, and we don't have that ecosystem where people are willing to take a punt on 100 different businesses and think 95 of them won't make any money, you know, some of them are going to fold, some of them are going to do this, blah, 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 blah. But eventually, you know, one's going to come through. People here tend to invest less money in less businesses. And so they're looking for businesses that are making money. The main reason for that is that most of the investors will have come from brick and mortar businesses. So whereas in Silicon Valley, you have people who, for instance, might have made money in the early days on Facebook, right? So they've already made money on these online businesses where there wasn't a lot of revenue or no revenue, whereas most of the people here will have probably had a traditional kind of business, and so there's a bit of a challenge for them to get their head around, this business might not make any money for 5 years, you know, and I'm going to have to live with that. So generally, if you're going to establish a business in the UK, try and make one that is going to make some money sooner rather than later, because you'll find it a lot easier to raise investment. The ones that aren't making money are going to struggle. So bank funding, except in the kind of startup loan space, where obviously it's aimed specifically at startups, is the hardest. Just because we've now economically in a situation where they're just not lending. They're not lending to early stage businesses. They're just not. It's very, very difficult to get funding from a bank. So that's back when I was starting one of my other businesses, it was really easy. And in fact, when I ran my PR agency, we'd had £150,000 overdraft because we were generating over £1 million turnover. And we went to the bank and said, our clients don't pay us as quickly as they should, but here's our invoices. And you can see that, you know, we're turning over X amount every month. And they went, yeah, fine, sign the piece of paper. And I think it took a week. We didn't even need to produce a business plan, nothing. And they gave us basically £150,000 just signing. That would never happen now. So then you look at things like crowdfunding. Crowdfunding's interesting in that now we see that there's a range of different types of crowdfunding, whether it's equity or reward-based. You still need to have a lot of money committed, and friends of mine that have successfully crowdfunded have had about 70% of the money already in place and are really just looking for the crowd as a way of a top-up, and also it's a great way of just marketing your business because you're creating all these brand ambassadors that are loving your business and they're telling their friends they've just invested. So as a PR exercise, it's fabulous, but it's still very, very hard. And you can't really start from zero and expect to reach your number. And that's kind of the hype around it. Equity crowdfunding is, it's, again, as I said, it's about having those warm leads. It's about lots of networking, getting those introductions, making friends, getting people to trust you. So none of this is quick. And I think that's the main thing, is that anyone I know who's raising investment these days is looking at between 6 months to a year. And it's pretty much a full-time job.